Let's go, let's go, let's go.
Give me some juice.
Man, you see this? Y'all see this?
Welcome to another edition of Giants Access Blue presented by Ford. I'm Bob Papa at the Quest Diagnostics Training Center. Phil McConkey had a very important career with the New York Giants, an unlikely career with Big Blue. He's the focus of this edition of Giants Chronicles. All right, Phil, you're getting out of the Navy and you wind up with the New York Giants. What kept you kind of driven to try a pro career?
Well, I thought I was going to be a Navy pilot for 20 years. I got done playing at the academy and we went to a bowl game. I was MVP of the bowl game, and it was a pretty nice way to end your football career as a 21, 22-year-old. And I thought that was it. I was looking at 5 years in the Navy and didn't think there was any way I'd have a chance to play pro football. About 3.5 years into my commitment, and I was enjoying the Navy and flying, I just started getting this urge to play football again. And I kept wondering what would happen if I had the opportunity. And I'd watch games on Sunday, and at some point along the way during that time, I said to myself, this was my dream as a little boy. I'm going to get out of the Navy when my time is up. I'm going to try it. So 27 years old, barely 160 pounds, and I hadn't played football in 5 years. And I told people I was going to play pro football or try to play. They laughed at me. They said it was just an impossible dream. You couldn't do it. So first thing I did, I was at the Naval Academy. I sought out Steve Belichick, Bill's father, who had been an assistant there for many, many years. And I said, what do you think? He goes, well, you've got to run under 4.6 or nobody will even talk to you. So he says, come on out tomorrow, I'll time you. So he timed me and he goes, do it again. He timed me again. He goes, both in the 4.4s. He goes, I'll call Bill, meaning Belichick. And that was the first year Bill Belichick became defensive coordinator from special teams coach. As you know, Parcells went from defensive coordinator to head coach. And that's how I got my shot and I got a look.
You're 27. And you're going to a football team that's starting to build something. What was it like, and what do you think your chances really were?
Well, I sit and I look back, and really I didn't have a very good chance at all. For some reason, I thought I could do it. I thought I was good enough. I thought that if given the chance, I could make it. I could overcome all these hurdles and obstacles. And I just remember going full speed, all out on every single snap, because thinking this was going to be the last. Maybe I don't last. And I'll never forget Bill Parcells' first practice as a head coach. He came up to me after that practice and he said to me, son, you better slow your motor down. You're going to burn yourself out. I don't know if he's ever done that in his career, told somebody to slow it down. But for some reason, I fought and scratched and clawed and thought I could do it.
Were you worried about having not played football for as long as you hadn't, that you could be fast, you could buzz around, but there's a physical component that you can never prepare for until you actually get hit?
Yeah, I think there was some rust there, and I realized it. And every day I got more and more comfortable. And I think the change of the coaching staff and Parcells coming as head coach and Belichick and Romeo Crennel and those guys and Pat Hodgson, you felt like there was a real opportunity. The big thing for me was my ability to catch punts. If you remember, those two guys leading this team were both defensive-minded coaches. The last thing in the world they want is some little SOB going on the field and dropping the ball, watching their defense go back out onto the field. And I think that pressure and that being uncomfortable kind of really honed my focus. Catching punts in Giant Stadium was a tough chore. That wind would howl. It was tough enough under ideal situations, but you add the inclement weather and the winds, it was really difficult to catch punts, and I think that helped me focus. So I think my ability to catch punts and securely catch punts really caught their eye early on, and that just got my foot in the door.
Let's go! Back to throw, fires it left, completes it to Robinson, in for the touchdown! Jones to the 10, Jones to the 5, Jones in, touchdown Giants, 21 yards, intercepted by Bolton in the end zone, touchback. Brought down and sacked by Dexter Lawrence. I'm in a war. Leaping try made for it, and it's caught for the touchdown.
Yo, we coming.
In 1985, Phil McConkey would have his best season with the New York Giants, becoming a reliable target for quarterback Phil Simms. McConkey would have career highs in receptions and punt return yardage.
85 came, and again, we made the playoffs in 84. In 85, playing special teams, punt returners, returning kickoffs, and then getting my shot as a receiver, mostly on third down, and then shuttling in play. So probably that year I got to play as much as any, and I thought at that point, after 2 years, that my skills were starting to hone themselves and the rust was starting to come off and that I was getting better, even though I was getting into my late 20s, which for a wide receiver or for an NFL player is pretty ancient.
All right, so you come to the team in 84, playoffs, lose to the Niners. 85, you lose to the Chicago Bears, two teams that went on to win the Super Bowl. When you stepped off the field in 85, did you say, we've got what's under the hood of this car to take this thing to the next level?
Yeah, I think everybody did. The painful part was you lose a game like that and you've got to go through the whole process again. There's a whole nother year in mini camp and training camp and all the pain of a regular season schedule, and just minutes before you were in the exact spot you wanted to be in, and you had to go through it all over again. So I think that experience really galvanized this team. Losing that game was the impetus for the Giant players and organization to go on to win the Super Bowl.
Despite his most productive season as a Giant in 1985, McConkey was surprised to find out that his time with the Big Blue would have a premature ending.
I come to training camp and I thought I had the best training camp of the three. I thought my skills had kind of come back and I was mature. I knew exactly what I was doing. Thought I had a great training camp. So it was a bit of a shock to me when I got cut. And Parcells called me in and said, McConkey, if I didn't have your name on your jersey, I wouldn't have known it was you. And I'm going, and I remember thinking to myself, well, what are you talking about? This is the best training camp I've ever had. You're just looking for excuses, Bill. So I get cut. It was devastating. Still thought I could play pro football, and got a call a few hours later from the Green Bay Packers to go to Green Bay. Fly into Green Bay, all excited. I'm playing for this legendary franchise. And I remember driving up to Lambeau Field to go to the locker room, sign a contract, and outside the stadium there was a Green Bay Packers Hall of Fame. And at that time, they had a Green Bay Packers statue, bigger than life, number 88 on the jersey. I get into the stadium, they give me a jersey, and I'm number 88. So I go to practice, sign the contract. Afterwards, I'm at the locker, and the reporters are all coming around, new guy in town, and they say, well, what do you think of it so far? I go, man, this place is unbelievable. They go, what are you talking about? I go, well, can you imagine getting cut by a team and then getting picked up by waivers by the Packers, and they erect a statue of you in front of the museum before you even play it down, and they look down at my number 88, and they got a chuckle. So it was fun.
But after just 4 games into his stint with Green Bay, Phil would find out that he was once again on the move.
Monday, after the 4th loss with the Packers, and I get called in to see the head coach. Forrest Gregg was the head coach. So I think, you know what? We got a guy coming back from injured reserve. Maybe I'm going to be gone. And he sits me down in a chair. He goes, I've got some good news for you. We've traded you back to the Giants. And I just looked at him like he was from outer space. It didn't make any sense to me at the time. I just got cut. He told me that Parcells was going to call. He had to go to a meeting. Good luck. Thanks for the contribution. I thanked him. He left. The phone rings. It's Parcells on the other end. And I go, hey, Bill, how you doing? He goes, McConkey, those Packers drive a hard bargain. I go, what are you talking about? He goes, I had to throw in a couple clipboards with that blocking dummy to get you back. So, I just wanted to, grab him through the phone and, you wise guy. But I was ecstatic, and it was like Christmas for me. I mean, it was one of the greatest feelings of my life, walking back into that locker room and being around the guys that I would eventually win a Super Bowl with, who to this day are my brothers.
Let's go! Back to throw, fires it left, completes it to Robinson, in for the touchdown! Jones to 10, Jones to the 5, Jones in, touchdown Giants, 21 yards, brought down and sacked by Dexter Lawrence.
Head coach Bill Parcells and the rest of the Giant players and coaches.
When you think back to that 86 season, one of the iconic moments obviously is the win in San Francisco on the Monday night and the Mark Bavaro play.
Complete to Bavaro, down to the 35, still on his feet to the 30, down to the 25, down to the 20. He's got 4 men on his back and gets down to the 17.
When you think about that game, what are the first things that come to your mind?
Being down 17-0 to Joe Montana, Bill Walsh, the great San Francisco 49ers, in their building on a Monday night. I remember in the locker room thinking, most teams, it's over for most teams. But there was a confidence in that team. We were so resilient. We came out and said, we expected to win that game with all those odds against us. And we came out, and the third quarter of that game may have been the best quarter of football that I've ever been associated with. Scored 21 points and just imposed our will on the 49ers.
What about the game in Washington when you clinched the division? That
game was, again, a microcosm of that 86 team. We imposed our will. Our defense was ferocious. And even for me personally, catching a touchdown against Darrell Green to ice the game, late in the game, was a great deal.
Sims is back at the 25, looking for a target. He's going end zone. Touchdown! What a catch by Phil McConkey in the back corner. Double team.
The winner of that game was going to win the division and get home field advantage for the NFC throughout the playoffs. That's how important that game was.
All right, so now the playoffs start. Do you feel that you guys can't be beat at this point?
Yeah, we had a run there. We knew how we would respond in every scenario. So we get into the playoffs. First game, here comes Joe Montana and Jerry Rice and Bill Walsh, the San Francisco 49ers. We've got them at our place. And Jerry Rice takes a long pass. He's going in to score, and somehow the ball pops loose. And, I've got some friends on there. They say, well, it could have changed the outcome of the game. I go, yeah, it would have been 49-10 instead 49-3 because we were not going to lose that game. That was just, a steamroller of a game. We were on top of our game as well as I've ever seen it.
Then obviously the NFC Championship game. It's windy and fielding punts on that day.
Windy? There were gusts 60, 70 miles an hour, I believe. It was extremely windy. If you go back and look at some of the tape and the confetti flying around, and it was really bad. We won the toss, elected to kick off, 3 and out for them, and they punted a lot.
McConkey standing back at his own 10-yard line, the Giant 10.
Now, one of the mantras of a Bill Parcells and a Bill Belichick on punt returns, you don't let that ball hit the ground. It was against the law for me to let the ball hit the ground, so I knew I had to catch everything, and I was able to.
Here's Cox's punt. McConkey's going to handle. It does. McConkey gets outside the 30.
And I just can remember the howling of winds. And I remember Carl Banks, who, maybe he had an MVP season. He may have been the MVP of the league. And Lawrence, rightfully so, got so much acclaim. But Carl Banks was an absolute stud. And I just remember him play after play in that game, stoning running backs. Defense just swarmed him. Sims piercing the wind. Lionel comes back from injury. Lionel Manuel catching a touchdown. And Sean Landeta, their guy couldn't do anything punting into the wind. And Landeta was able to somehow pierce the wind. And that game, that experience, being in front of Giants fans who had been starving for a championship. At that point, I think it was 30 years. The electricity, the emotion in that stadium, winning an NFC championship here at Giants Stadium in front of our fans in a blustery, cold day was as good an experience as I've ever been around.
When you win the championship, you know you're going to the Super Bowl. It's the greatest feeling in sports.
Let's go! Back to throw, fires it left, completes it to Robinson, in for the touchdown! Jones to 10, Jones to the 5, Jones in, touchdown Giants, 21 yards, intercepted by Belton in the end zone, touchback. Brought down and sacked by Dexter Lawrence. I'm in a world. Leaping try made for us, and it's caught for the touchdown.
Yo, we coming.
Bill Parcells comes out of his office, and he's got a big chart of the Rose Bowl. He's got a tripod. He puts the chart up on the tripod, and he looks at me. He said, look, these are the sections that our fans will be in. When you come running out of that tunnel, here's where they'll be. Take that towel, get them revved up, because we want to make it seem like it's Giants Stadium.
Now you're in the Super Bowl against the Denver Broncos, and the towel waving.
Yeah.
Give me the origin of that, because till this day, If a player waves a towel, Giant fans think of Phil McConkey.
I had so much pent-up energy in the locker room. So we'd get out to the tunnel area, and I just couldn't wait till they said go.
Now the NFC champions, the New York Giants.
Sprint down the field. I started waving. I'd get to the far end of the stadium, and they'd all stand up. So I used to have the towel on, and I started waving the towel, and it was bedlam. People would just start bringing towels. So it kind of progressed from just getting the butterflies out, sprinting down to the field, to full-fledged get the towel out from the minute I went out and started whipping up the fans into a frenzy. We went into that game, and one thing about Parcells, he wasn't afraid to mix it up. We went totally contra. We threw the ball when we should have been running it. We're throwing flea flickers.
McConkey comes in motion to the right-hand side. Pitch. Morris turns around back to Sims on the flea flicker. Sims is looking way downfield. He's got a receiver. Complete. Down to the 10. 5. Touchdown, I believe. No, they are marking at the 1. Phil McConkey to the 1-yard line. Well, we expected that call from Denver, not from the Giants. A flea flicker. And it worked.
As you're running down that left sideline, and there's an end zone right there, and you're saying, wow, 3 years ago I was in the Navy, and now I'm about to score a touchdown in the Super Bowl, and you had to be sick.
Well, my dream, my whole life, almost 30 years old, and you think about everything I'd ever dreamt of in my life up to that point was right there. Well, even just before I caught it, I can remember coming in motion across the formation from left to right, turning upfield. And you talk about being fooled. Their secondary, their linebacking core, they were running around like chickens with their heads cut off. They had no clue. I came across, and there was a big void, and I remember the ball coming, and I remember catching it and turning upfield and just seeing green grass and white stripes and thinking, I am going to score a touchdown in the Super Bowl. Defense started to close on me, and I tried to hurdle him from the 5-yard line, and he caught my legs, and I landed about a foot and a half from the end zone, realized that I wasn't in, and it was the most frustrating feeling that I got that close to a Super Bowl touchdown.
McConkey head over heels at about the 1 or 2 yard line. A gain of 44.
And that's his celebration. Phil McConkey wanted a Super Bowl touchdown. He said it's a great play. We're going to get the touchdown. Right when it goes down the record, McConkey scored a touchdown.
The emotions that I had at that point, the joy, the thrill that we're going to win, but the frustration of getting that close to a Super Bowl touchdown was pretty frustrating at that point. I was also thrilled knowing that we were going to score the next play, and that was pretty much a decisive play of the game because we scored the next play. That game was, for all intent and purposes, over.
1 yard needed for a touchdown. Handoff, Morris is going to get it.
And the Giants increased their lead to 26-10.
As fate would have it, in the fourth quarter, McConkey's dream would come true with a little help from his friend and Giant teammate Mark Bavaro.
It is complete. Yes, he hung on to the ball. Bavaro hung on to the ball, and McConkey came down with it off his fingertips. Bavaro to McConkey in the end zone.
Well, as he likes to say, I helped him out because he dropped the ball.
Right.
Sims delivered it right between his hands. Ball's deflecting. It's tumbling end over end down, and just snatched it, a foot or so from the ground. And again, I was ecstatic. Super Bowl touchdown.
When I saw the ball bounce off my head and fall into McConkey's hands, he was all over it.
He wanted it.
He wanted it. Thank God, thank God he's like that because he's so tenacious, He caught it, and I was probably happier than he was.
The Super Bowl champions are the Giants.
Why do you think, your Giant career wasn't very long. It was 84 through 88 with the stop in Green Bay. Why do you think you resonate with Giant fans? Till this day, you're one of the names, and they talk about the 86 Giants, your name comes to the front of people's minds.
I think in this area, people really appreciate competitors. So I was a competitor, and that's how I got here, that's how I stayed here, that's how I contributed. And I think Giants fans have always related to competitive, highly competitive people that would lay it all on the line to help their team win. And it didn't hurt that I probably had the best game of my pro career and the biggest game of my life. And, those plays will resonate for Giants history.
McConkey's NFL career ended in 1989. In his 5 seasons with New York, Phil would become one of the most beloved Giants of his era. And decades later, he still feels that strong bond to the Big Blue family.
I go back to Wellington era. Wellington said there's 2 kind of Giants. You're either active or inactive. There was never retired or former or ex, which means to all of us that we're still part of this organization. It's 20-something years later. I feel like I'm part of the team, and that's special.
Well, Giants fans will always remember number 80, the eye black, waving the towel, and just a guy who sort of exemplified what those 86 Giants were all about. That wraps it up for this week's show. Make sure you follow the Giants on Facebook.com/New York Giants, on Twitter at Giants, the Giants mobile app, and always at Giants.com. For our entire crew, I'm Bob Papa. Thanks for joining us for this edition of Giants Access Blue, presented by Ford.